Yeah. Is it Kill Bill? The whistling in that? Is it?
Oh yes. Yep.
That's a pretty haunting one.
That's such a cool question, first of all.
That is such a good question, and this is such a boring, maybe cliche answer, but
This movie is just spectacular. You, of course, just phenomenal in this. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tara, very, very much. Thank you.
I have never been able to whistle, and it's a testament to your whistling skills and your acting, and actually to Kirsten's acting, that every time you hear that whistle, that tune, I ended up having a very visceral reaction myself. It has stayed with me. So I'm curious, I've been asking the cast, is there a tune or a song that to this day, you still have a visceral reaction to it?
Yeah, the tune from Close Encounters to a Third Kind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, is it Kill Bill? The whistling in that? Is it?
Oh yes, yep.
That's a pretty haunting one. Oh, there are a few, and I just thought about the march, just like slowing it down, just making it really menacing, because it's all supposed to be light and jolly, and if you really sort of make it slow and kind of ringing, it's got a pretty nerve-wracking intensity.
No, it's just spectacular. You know, you've talked about the skills that you had to learn on this, from playing the banjo to getting on a horse. What do you think is the skill that you're most likely to use again in your personal life?
Whistling, actually. I'm not going to make this entirely about whistling, but it's very handy if you're trying to get the attention of family members across a large open space and they know that whistle. It's a good way of communicating across vast spaces. So if we're in a park or something like that, and that could be helpful. I probably shouldn't say that. Everyone will turn around when I whistle, but yeah.
There you go.
Horse riding. I love horse riding. It's sadly not a skill we need much in the modern world, but what a wonderful thing to have that synchronicity between an animal and a human. And I had the most amazing creature in cricket. He was a masterful horse and taught me to be a better rider, as I learned when I went on less good horses and just knew what to do because of him. But the countless ones that I think will be useful. I mean, I'm happy to roll a cigarette for somebody else. I'm not necessarily going to be able to do a good job with one hand, as I tried to do on every day of the shoot. It's pretty tricky. And there were loads of men going, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do it. There was a Scotsman as well, but I'm not going to do my Scots accent. But yeah, they were all sort of very fattened, falling apart nonsense cigarettes. So yeah, it's maybe Nikes. It's really.
And I don't want to be a mood kill, but smoking is not good for you anyway. So I'm just.
It's not. No, that was. I mean, people say, "Gosh, what was hard about this role?" And nothing really, other than the smoking. That was actually physically very hard because it just made me feel so sick and it's so bad for you. But all the obstacles, all the challenges, all the extraordinary gifts of the complexity of this character, to hold secrets, to reveal them, and to work with a master like Jane, and to be in parallel with her to discover this material and this incredible character that we both curated so preciously from Thomas Savage's novel. That is a gift. My job is a gift, and to get to do a gig like this with her is just it's an embarrassment of riches again. So
Well, you gave us this film, honestly, Benedict, is a gift. I don't know. I watched this movie. Your character is so fascinating. You want to despise him, and then more is revealed. The shifts that you make are so subtle and engaging and spectacular. I wanted a prequel, actually. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I want to see how he got here. Did you ever think about that?
I could talk to Jane. I'm not sure how big she is on serialization, but we can maybe get to a franchise of Power of the Dog, the prequel. Yeah. Look, the book it's just a very rich mine of backstory, and I urge people to read it. It is a phenomenal piece of prose. It's a rediscovered classic. It didn't quite have its moment that it should have done, but I believe it's up there. Really, I do believe it's up there with some of the great novels of Faulkner, and it's a great American novel, really is. And I think the fluidity that you have, the kind of gift of writing in a novelistic form, is obviously that you can jump around with timelines, and you feel fleshed out in the present tense storyline in that book, because you've had these wonderful vignettes of everything from when they were kids opening Christmas presents, to when Bronco Henry was present and alive, to an episode with this boy with these marbles who's trying to cheat Phil, and he ends up winning the game and destroying this boy. I'm giggling because the boy's pretty abhorrent, but so's Phil's behavior. Not the best teacher or parent, but you see all these shards of truth, and and that is the prequel is in the book. Definitely, there's a lot of material there.
Who would you cast as Bronco Henry?
No, I met a couple that were quite could possibly fit that bill. But I'm not.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know. I wish we had more time. I'm sorry I went a little over. I can't wait till award season. Hope to see you in person.
Thank you very much.
I guess the first question, I've heard that you both had different approaches as it related to Benedict and working with Benedict. Jesse, I think you got to hike with him maybe. Kirsten, you tried to keep your distance a little bit. Do you all do anything special when you're working with each other? I know it probably depends on the characters you're playing, but is there anything the two of you do?
Oh, me and Jesse.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of each other's sounding boards. Like we throw out all the bad ideas to each other,
Yeah, on every film we do too.
Yeah.
On like when he's doing movie, he'll ask me advice, or if I am, he's my favorite creative cohort.
Yeah.
So to work with him is naturally, it's the easiest for me. It's like there's no ego involved. We just want to like be the most honest, and yeah.
I'm curious then, did you ask him, what was some advice that you might remember asking him as it relates to Rose and your portrayal of her? Or was there anything?
I remember asking you, I just wanted to make sure that there was more to George than him as like the way Phil sees him, which is just kind of, sort of dull, slow, fat, kind of, nothing. And I really was that was one of the most exciting parts of playing George, was finding a way to give him a sort of grace in the way that he handles Phil, rather than it being something that's just like sort of like,
okay,
right.
yeah, but you pulled it off perfectly.
Well,
You did
thanks,
it.
baby.
Yeah,
Thanks.
now you're just like looking at it, the way he plays it towards Phil is like an understanding brother who's had to put up with this his whole life.
Yeah, you nailed it in so many ways. I loved the way when you two meet and the attraction he has for her, the respect he has for her, and then he's doing the dishes, and I thought, oh, he's the best. So my question about Jesse is, what is something that Jesse Plemons does around the house where you look at him and go, oh man, he's the best?
Doesn't happen. No, I'm just kidding. What do I do?
You're like, please. Jesse's a wonderful father, and we're a team, It's not like the responsibility falls on one or the other. I think we have so much respect for each other that started creatively and then blossomed. So blossomed. Right? Such a I think as you have blossomy paintings behind you, I was just like, blossom.
Oh. And I'm not even that into art, but I tried to jazz up my Zoom room.
Just like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
Yes,
we're
of
real
course.
partners, which is not always the case in certain relationships.
Well, and honestly, not that you needed to pull off these characters, but the fact that you are in real life made it even more special. I'll be honest, for me as an audience member, just to watch the two of you. Oh, I just love it. The whistle, it's still in my head, but it's only effective if you, Kirsten, pull off what you have to do to convince us. Every time you hear it in the movie, I have a visceral reaction. I'm getting tense, literally my body. And it's because of the job you do. So this might be a silly question. Is there a song that triggers each of you? Something, a tune where when you hear it to this day, either in a good way or a bad way, it is a trigger.
That's such a cool question,
Yeah.
first of all. The first thing you said when you first talking about it, I actually used Johnny Greenwood from The Master.
And There Will Be Blood.
And There Will Be Blood is what I use. I used that a lot because I knew he was doing the score and I wanted to get into the zone of Johnny Greenwood. But to be honest, there's this song in Marie Antoinette. It's called, it's by Aphex Twin, and it's called Avril 14. And every time I hear the song, I'm just so brought to that time. And yeah, it just makes me immediately like feel very vulnerable and kind of like could tear up a little bit just because it was just like such a specific time Yeah.
And Jesse, what's yours?
I don't even remember the name of the song, but it was on, and I don't listen to him that much anymore, but Bon Iver, that first album, I hear this one song and yeah, just
Like-
transported right back to this moment when it was raining and you know, it's
You're
like,
right.
I
sounds
thought-
corny, but it's like, that's, yeah.
I thought you were gonna say the Lonesome Dove song.
Oh, that? Well, I mean,
That's like literally the soundtrack of your life, your childhood.
That is such a good question, and this is such a like boring, maybe cliche answer, but come on, like the Titanic soundtrack. I think possibly I was traumatized by it because my mom showed that movie to me so young, and it just like hit me in such an emotional spot. It was the first time I remember crying from a movie, and I step lightly around it to this day. But if I ever hear that soundtrack, I could cry.
You know, I was listening to an interview where you talked about how playing Peter gave you a little more appreciation into yourself. And I was curious what you meant by that, if you could expand on that a little bit for me.
Sure. I mean, he taught me a lot of things, but one of the main things is that I feel in our day and age and predating this for a long time, as you know, this story was written 60 years ago and the story itself is set in a period which is 60 years before it. So I think there's been an idea that goes around a long time that we tend to generalize what strength is, what it looks like in a man or a woman. And I think that can be quite, I don't mean to use cliche, very mainstream words, but it can be toxic. For me personally, growing up, I was a very feminine guy, and I think that fed into a lot of, you know, the reasons why I'm so creative. I love music, I love painting, I love writing. But that wasn't necessarily the norm in my school, or at least, you know, in Australia, in the small country town that I grew up in. And that was hard sometimes. And also, you know, my dad, he's like a 6'6", very, you know, big Aussie bloke with tattoos and all that, and always around outlaw bikers and stuff. And, you know, for a little while, it's not his fault, but it's our world. I thought that I possibly had to be that. You know, I'm his son. Do I have to grow up and be that one day too? But no, my parents and my dad, you know, specifically gave me the freedom to be myself. And I think that's so important. And that's who Peter is. He embraces completely who he is. And he's still powerful. He's still strong and confident, no matter what he looks like or what he's interested in.
Well, and it's interesting because in a way we fall into that trap as well. We tend to just immediately we assume he's not strong. So we are even more protective, or as an audience member, you feel more protective. And then you learn, you know what? He can hold his own.
It's definitely an intentional, you know, play on the character. And it was something that I obviously did myself in reading it. And that's why he struck me so much. That's why the story overall struck me so much, is because it takes away your cleverness, or at least your pseudo cleverness, in thinking where you know the story is going or who you think someone is.
So as creative and artistic as you are, did you actually make those flowers, the paper flowers?
There was, of course, geniuses at play that made the really good looking ones, but I did work with them to kind of mess with it a little bit. The closest I can express it to was like kind of like origami, and it wasn't so much like the delicate work itself that was hard. It was more so controlling and internalizing your patience to do something like that, you know?
Yeah, it takes a lot of time for sure. You know, it's interesting. I know that Kirsten has talked about not really talking to Benedict too much. Jesse, on the other hand, got to do some hikes with Benedict. What was your approach as it related to Benedict and the relationship you have in the film? What did you two do?
It was somewhere in between. Our characters are quite standoffish. I mean, at times they can be quite hostile to each other. There's a bit of headbutting there, but then at the same time, there's a bit of chemistry there, and that kind of evolves throughout the story and their relationship. So we, you know, as people and as actors off screen, had a bit more room to play. There wasn't that much playing on this film. I mean, it was always quite heavy. We needed it to be that, but you know, I had a bit more room to talk and have a bit of camaraderie with him in that sense.